Welcome. I was wanting to tell a really good joke about beekeeping, but I searched and searched and I just couldn't find a good joke. Everything I found was bee-grade material. Today I intend to demonstrate to you the modern beehive. Now, when I say modern beehive, we're talking about technology that was developed as recently as 1851 by Mr. Langstroth. Langstroth, who the system I'll be showing you is named after, made a beehive system that is modular and consists of frames. The beehive itself can be a wide variety of systems besides Langstroth, but the Langstroth system has all of the same components as the others. So as I show you what there is here, you'll be able to identify those same components in another system when you see them. The first component, or the first module of the Langstroth beehive system, is the lid. The lid's purpose is to keep out predators, to keep the inside cool when it's hot outside, or keep the inside warm when it's cold outside. This lid is made out of wood, it's painted with exterior grade paint, and has 2 inches of insulation to help with that temperature control issue. The next component of a beehive, a modern Langstroth beehive, is the supers. The supers are the main component. There can be any number of supers on a beehive. I've seen them with as many as 10, and of course you can go down to as few as 1. The bottom 1 or 2 supers, depending on the size and how many bees you've got, is what we call a brood box, and everything above that brood box, sometimes there's 3 in a brood box, but not very often, everything above that is what we call a honey super. A super is short for super frame. This particular beehive that I'm showing you today is sized for 5 frames. You can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames inside of it. The most common size actually holds 10 frames, so it's twice as wide as this. Another common size is an 8-frame super. The bottom of the beehive is made with a base. Now the base can be very basic and simple. It would just be a board, or it could be a sheet of plastic or metal even. Its purpose is very similar to the lid. It helps control the temperature inside, keep predators out, and that sort of thing. I have a pretty fancy base here because I want to show you some of the optional things that happens in a beehive base. So this beehive base has a wire screen. The wire screen allows garbage and waste material from the bees to drop through it and out onto the ground or onto this insulation board, which is removable for cleaning. All bases have this area that sticks out from under the supers that we call a landing board. That allows the field working bees to come in and land and crawl into the hive or crawl out of the hive and take off again. In this base, the insulation piece is adjustable, so you can open it to allow air to circulate through when it gets really hot outside, or close it when it's cold outside to help keep it warm. You can also remove it completely and clean it off, knock off the various pieces of garbage or mites or whatever might end up on it. So that's the base. Inside of each super, I mentioned that these supers have 5 frames, but inside each super we have the frames, which are really the guts of a beehive. The frames can be made from a variety of materials, or they can be a variety of sizes. So I've got a couple of varieties here to show you. My favorite one, the standard one I use in my beehives, is a wooden frame with a plastic foundation. And I don't know if you can see it from back there, but it has this honeycomb starter in the foundation that the bees then draw out their comb, and I'll show you that in just a minute as well. I also have here an all plastic frame. It has integrated foundation. It's all one piece, but it's a plastic frame. Very similar size, fits into the same beehive. I also have a small or a shallow frame. You notice it's about 20% less deep than the medium frame. This one has a wax foundation in it. Same concept, but a little bit smaller, and a wax foundation. The most common size out there is actually what we call a deep or a full frame. This frame, as you look, is about 50% deeper. It'll just hold that much more brood or that much more honey. I prefer to have more smaller supers rather than one big super. A 10-frame super with 10 of these in it, loaded with honey, can weigh 80 pounds, and that's a little bit hard to be lifting. So that's the frames. The top super, as we mentioned before, is the honey super. And the bees take all of the frames and they draw out honeycomb. So I've got a frame here. They show you empty comb. They start on the foundation. They build it to match that same pattern until they fill pretty much the whole thing. Here's one that's been mostly drawn out and filled halfway with honey. You see they just fill it all the way to the edges in a general pattern. The honey super at the end of the year or at the end of a good honey flow is hopefully full of honey. And the way that looks is something like this. We have here this honey frame and it's filled with honey. Now the honey gets capped. You see it's kind of translucent and allows you to see a little bit through. You see the honey in it. Up here near the outer edges there might be little air gaps or something in there. It looks a little more white in color, but it's just kind of relatively flat, mild textured, and contains honey. Each frame that's filled with honey on both sides weighs about 5 to 6 pounds. Underneath of the honey supers, which during the season you can add more and more, just every time you go out, oh, it's pretty full, you just add another one. That way you're dealing with mostly full supers. Or if you're set up to harvest throughout the year, you can pull it off and put an empty one in its place. But underneath of the honey supers, we have a queen excluder. Not all beekeepers use queen excluders, but the queen excluder goes between the brood boxes and the honey supers, and it prevents the queen from crawling up and laying eggs in the honey because nobody likes baby bees in their honey. The queen excluder is sized so that it's basically a grid. It can be made out of plastic or wood or metal, but it's sized so that the worker bees can go through it, but the queen bee cannot. And that forces the queen bee to not seek out new frames to start laying brood in because she's limited to the brood box. Inside the brood box, the frames are a little busier. They do a little bit more than just store honey. So I have a brood frame, and in the center area, it's kind of round, and imagine there's another box beneath here, so it kind of makes a big circle, is the area that the queen bee seeks out empty cells and lays an egg. That egg hatches into a larva, and the bees feed it, and it grows for a few days, and then it forms a cocoon as a pupa, and they put this little brown wax cap over it until that bee hatches and comes out as a new worker bee. Just surrounding this brood area, you can see, I hope, this slightly yellow, half-filled cells. That is pollen, and when they pack it down in there, we call that bee bread. It's the protein food source for the baby bees. And then around that, they put honey so that it's close by so they can also feed their bees honey so they have energy to grow and build their cocoon and such. So, to review really quickly, if you have a modern beehive, it has a lid, multiple supers, they're filled with frames, there's a brood area and a separate honey area. The bees will draw out the foundation into comb and use that comb for whatever purpose is appropriate for that area of the beehive. And if you do all of this correctly and you manage your bees well, what you end up with is honey. Amazing, sweet honey, which is so delicious.